Hi, everyone, and welcome to Practice Growth HQ. Now, today we're going to talk about marketing strategy to grow your practice fast. Is that what you like the sound of? We're in an increasingly competitive environment in healthcare, and yet, against that, what if we could come up with a way to market your practice to grow you fast, including a curiously titled thing called the SharkBite method? That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? The perfect person to talk about that is my guest, Nick Kraus. Now, he's the founder and CEO of Kraus Marketing, an award-winning marketing agency known for its creative marketing strategies. Maybe that's a hint, listeners. He's on the Inc. 5000 list, multi-award winning serial entrepreneur, all the way from New Jersey, USA. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. I just appreciate you having me.
All right, Nick, we like to start with the fast five, quicker questions and quicker answers so people can get to know you more quickly. Question one, where did you grow up?
New Jersey. Yeah. I live close to my hometown still.
There you go. Question two, favorite book besides your own?
It's a tough one, but I'll go with Shoe Dog by Phil Knight about Nike. Yeah.
That's a fascinating book. I was going to say for the entrepreneurs listening, and hopefully you all see yourselves as entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial journey captured in one book. Yeah, it's extraordinary. Question three, what's one of your superpowers?
That's a good question. That's one of my superpowers. I think being able to lead a team, leading, I think is something that I've always been good at.
Yeah, okay, good for you. He's got 40 people working for him in multiple locations. We'll get to that. And that doesn't happen without strong leadership. So we might actually spend a minute talking about that as well. Question four, something you wish your 20-year-old self knew.
I guess that everything's going to work out just fine and not to stress about it too much.
Okay, yes, that is, we do hear that one a bit for that advice to your 20-year-old self. And then finally, Nick, question five, something you're grateful for.
I guess all that just does is very overarching, but all the blessings in my life. I tend to find that things come to me and timing tends to work out with me very well. So I'm just very blessed.
Wow, that's great. It's a great perspective. I'm aware we've got a part of our brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system, which is basically a filter that turns about 1 million bits of information a second into between 5 to 7. And if you can tune your RAS into all the blessings and all the good things and things working for perfect timing, the reality is you'll see that stuff. If we got our RAS tuned into everything that's wrong with the world, guess what? We'll see all that stuff. So good on you for having that. All right, Nick, let's talk about growing our healthcare practice faster, and in particular, the kind of underpinning strategy to do so and your SharkBite method.
Yeah, I'll tell you just a little bit about the SharkBite method. It's a proprietary digital marketing strategy that we created here at Kraus. We evolved it over time. So just like the shark's bite, which has evolved over tens of thousands of years, it has several layers of teeth, and it's an apex predator that always catches its prey. The SharkBite method that Kraus Marketing developed evolved over time, uses several tactics, and it's highly effective at catching your target audience's attention. So we use that, and I can go a little bit more into that, but growing your practice fast also has levels of team that are required. Besides great talent, I think is equal to great marketing. And of course, having cash flow is another probably equal part too.
All right. Well, you've got us curious. I must admit, when I'm wanting to zone out a bit of an evening, sometimes I'm flicking there. I'm on social media on Reels, and social media is pretty smart. They know the ones that I've spent the time watching. And for whatever reason, I keep on getting Reels about snakes, including one snake eating another, which is just an extraordinary thing. But the other one is sharks. Lots and lots of reels about sharks. And so, yes, I like the mental imagery there. Okay, take us through the SharkBite method then.
Yeah, it has three parts to it. It's creating your strategy, it's executing your strategy, and it's measuring your strategy. Creating the strategy is one of the most important parts. When you're talking about going quick, if you don't have a vision and a strategy, you will waste a lot of time on execution, because every day you'll wake up and try to figure out what to do next. If you have a good strategy and a good plan, When you wake up every day, you know what to do next. That's already done. You're not thinking about that, you're executing. And then, of course, measuring how everything's going is highly important as well.
So let's imagine we'll pick on a listener. I don't know the names of all our listeners, pretty obviously, but let's imagine that Sarah is listening to this, who's, I guess, Sarah the dentist, perhaps doesn't really matter. Let's just assume it's general practice.
Okay.
Sarah, the general practitioner, she comes to you and she's, let's go. What are you doing at the strategy stage?
Yeah, we're really understanding her target audience. Who is she targeting, right? I know that sounds obvious, but so many people say anybody that needs a doctor,
Yeah.
right? That's not true. What do you specialize in? What do you want to be known for? If you have a bullseye, you'll still hit the things around it, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're just aiming at a bullseye, you still hit the things around it. So we always want to try to figure out what the bullseye is. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 different bullseyes. So that target audience is really important. Because if we could understand who your target audience is, then we could understand what they care about, and we could also understand their pain points.
Mm.
If we know those things, then we could create categories of content to write about, to film about, to take pictures about. I know I'm going a little bit fast here. That is one of the first things that we talk about strategy is that audience and why do they care about your practice and what's most important to them. Sometimes it's not always about being sick or an illness. Most of the time it's about great care, but sometimes it's about efficient, quick visits. Maybe it's telemedicine. Maybe it's flexibility of insurances. Maybe it's the ability to treat multiple issues, right? So we really need to understand what that target audience cares about. And then we need to start creating categories of content, what we call buckets or themes that we could write about. One of those could be our different practice areas. Another one could be about our doctors. Another one could be highlighting those pain points and how we solve those pain points, right? And we say it in a way, ever spend 30 minutes this is just an example, ever spend 30 minutes in the waiting room, 30 minutes in the exam room to talk to the doctor for 3 minutes? We promise our doctors are there and your visits are quick. That's like an example, right? So we don't say, that we practice efficiency. We give an example of it, but that pain point now is built into one of our buckets, right? So once we have those buckets, we create short form content. I just gave an example of that. To create long form content, that's blogs and or video about it. So thought leadership content. And then we make sure we distribute it. So now we're getting into the execution phase of things, but
let's go back to our bullseye, sometimes called avatars. It's your kind of ideal patient. How do you figure out with Sarah who her ideal patients are? Is it those who historically have been good clients for the practice? Is there an aspirational element? How do you weave that all together?
Yeah, typically it's both. Actually, it's a really good question. And one thing that we always ask is, so if you could tell us about your best client, who would that be? And that's a very easy thing for someone to talk about. And they might name 45-year-old woman and a 25-year-old man, and they might have different reasons. And those are different avatars, as you said, of current clients. And then we could say, and if you had a client that you could work with a lot more, who would that be? So these are questions that we work them through in order to help them understand and relay to us who they're really going after. And then, those avatars get very detailed. We want to know their age. We want to know where they live. We want to know what their interests are. We want to know what their occupations are. Even income is always so obviously very important as well. So we really drill down and create also, of course, in there is their pain points. Why would they come to a doctor like you? And what can you do to deliver more to them? So what would be, they come to you for efficiency, but what else would they come to you for? And it might be for the soft touch or the kindness that might be the extra. We define more than just pain points. It's what would be something outstanding that they wouldn't expect but would love.
Do you ever find that as you're going through this process that sometimes the practice has got to potentially change the way they do business a little bit? I don't mean change their marketing, but you've identified this person you're trying to attract, and are there ever these kind of epiphanies where they go, hey, we've not really focused on this person sufficiently. Here's a couple of extra things we could do. Does that ever happen?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. These workshops usually take an hour and a half to 2 hours. And all the time people are like, we talk about that, but we don't really do it. We should create a process around that. Hey, Jen, we've brought this up 1,000 times, but have we ever finished that? Or have we ever? So yeah, those epiphanies happen all the time. It's actually very enlightening. All the clients of ours, when they walk out of those meetings, are inspired by their own conversation. It's just us asking them questions about their vision. And I think it helps them to realize, yeah, many different things. Some things they've been working on and doing great, and some things they need to work on.
Yeah, I guess a practical question. Most healthcare practices in Australia and the US are not really drawing people from that far away unless they're doing something a bit unusual. There's sort of doctors per head of capita, the dentists per head, etc., physios. There's lots of them. If you're in a metropolitan area, if you're driving 15 minutes to go and see your doctor, dentist, physio, podiatrist, etc., you've probably driven past 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 others. So how do you balance where someone comes in and I did look on the map where Nick's business is. He's to the west of New York City, and I'm just making this up, but I'm an hour from New York City, and my avatar is actors and actresses who only live in New York City, for example. How does that ever come up? How do you manage that?
That would be a question of why would they drive past several other doctors to see you? What would be the catch? And then that special sauce is something that if they believe it's special enough for someone to drive an hour to see them, then that's something that we have to make sure that we have a lot of creative and content around to make sure we build awareness of why people should take the extra trip in order to see them. So we have to, it's our job to not only uncover it, but to build awareness around it. I think a lot of agencies expect someone to come in and just be able to tell them that. And I think that's one of the most important things is for us to really understand and peel back that onion.
Yeah. Now, listeners, some of you may be thinking at this point, what's the big deal? I've got a practice in the suburbs. I'm just going to attract the local people. And that's true, but the more specific you can be on this, it's setting out on a trip on a boat or something and going, where are we going? Oh, over that way. I think there's a line from Alice in Wonderland where they say, where are you trying to get to? And it's, I'm not sure. Then anyway, he's going to take you there. And the more specific you can get on where it is that you want to get to, the more that you're going to find yourself of a morning looking at the schedule for the day and going, oh my goodness, look at who's coming in today. I know every one of those patients. I love them. They value the services that we've got. They take our ethical treatment recommendations and actually implement, et cetera, et cetera.
And almost no matter where you are at this point in the world, there is so much competition. And whether you feel like you have people who aren't going to stay local, there's still someone within 5 miles with you of you. And if they're doing a little bit better in building their brand, building that value and that perceived value to their patients, people will go 5 miles extra. And usually there's always an option within a couple extra miles of where you are. So you got to be aware of that competition. People are willing to go a little bit further for a little bit better or a lot better if they perceive it that way.
So the listeners are feeling inspired by this conversation. They go and approach their existing marketing agency, or maybe they go and look for a new one. What sort of questions should they be asking about this part of the process?
How do you attract clients and patients that I'm looking for? And then they should go into how they develop a strategy. And if they don't really have much of a strategy, development phase, and we call it strategic onboarding and brand immersion, if they don't have some type of process in order to really understand who you are, that might just not be the agency for you. So there is a lot of very shallow tactics that happen out there.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that's the kind of creating strategy section. I just would implore you, listeners, you don't have to be the marketer, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't pay attention to this. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take an interest in this. There are some aspects of business, and Nick and I will talk a bit more about running a business later, where you can't just be, numbers and stuff. That's just the accountant's department. I'll just give that all to them. You've got to, at least from this episode, hopefully you're getting a bit of an appreciation of the sort of things that you need to be looking for. You don't have to be the expert in this space, but if you just go in and say, can you just make me grow fast without any guidance, it's going to make it more difficult for the agency to be successful. Now, I can't read my own writing. I wrote down creating strategies, the first part. Oh, I beg your pardon, executing strategies, the next part. And you alluded to buckets, I think you said, buckets or themes. Tell us about how that works.
Usually we come up with buckets based on their pain points, right? And the other way we come up with buckets are based on cyclical buying habits. Now, for practices, medical practices and healthcare practices, for a general practitioner, that's more obvious, like flu season, allergy season, et cetera. That for a dentist, that might be less easy. And then I would look at more pain point buckets. Uh, but if we have an understanding of what those buckets are, what we first could do is, or what we next could do is create a content calendar. So what not a lot of people understand is all the great editorials ever written have a content calendar. So these big magazines and publications, they know in December what January through December of 2025 look like. Each month has a theme that they're going to be writing about. So first, what I'd like to do is break it down quarterly, and then I like to break it down monthly. So if we have a theme monthly that we're going to be creating content about, again, this is how we create efficiency. If I sit down and I actually create this content calendar, when I wake up or when I go to my marketing agency, or I go to my freelancer, or I go to my marketing coordinator that's right out of college, I say, hey, October is all about vaccination, getting ready for flu season. I want you to write about, here's 4 articles you could write about vaccinations, why they're safe, why they're effective. These are different contents. And now you could break it down further and further. Here's a social media post, here's a video, here's a blog topic. So we call it a content waterfall. So it starts with, it's easiest for our clients to first digest it quarterly. So we create the quarterly calendar, and we break it into a monthly calendar. And then from there, we don't go the whole entire year. We leave it a monthly calendar. We'll do about 3 to 6 months at a time, depending on how much content they're doing.
Right.
If they're a smaller practice, we could do 6 months of planning pretty quickly. If they're a larger practice with several layers and dozens of doctors, typically we go quarterly because we're going to be doing a lot of video, a lot of blog content, etc. But now we have detail for what January through March looks like. And that makes it easy. If I have an approved, whether I'm a marketing coordinator or a marketing agency, if I have an approved content calendar of what we're going to do, I can just go execute upon my job. Now, if you're a sole practitioner, and it's also important for you too, because maybe you have a marketing morning or a marketing day, and maybe that's only once a month, and you just do all your posts that, all your social media posts that day, you create your video and you write your blog that, but it's really easy to do. If you spend 2 hours thinking about what you're going to write about that month,
Right.
that's really hard to do. But if you already have it planned, you're just sitting down, drinking your coffee, and you're starting with your social media posts. You're moving on to your blogs, and then you're filming a quick selfie video at the end. That's much more easier achieved. And by creating this large content calendar, not large, but by creating this strategic creative calendar, it makes life a lot easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I can see how that can work. So you could have dare I say, you could have a bit of a matrix there where it's, here are our 3 themes, or maybe 1 or 2 personas, avatars. Here are the themes for each quarter or each month. Let's make sure we're producing some content for that person in that month on that topic. It's almost like painting by numbers, Nick.
It is.
Yeah, no, I like that
And
a lot.
once you can break it down easy like that, then you have only a few different tactics that you got to really focus on, especially as a medical practice. You want to be emailing them, right?
Yeah.
You want to be creating social media posts, and you want them on your website. And you might even want some content sitting in your office as well. But there's not a whole lot of tactics that you have to worry about. As you get bigger, you can talk about display marketing. We have something called CTV now that not a lot of people know what it is, but it's advertising on Hulu or Roku. So CTV is, instead of advertising on traditional television, you could advertise commercials very targeted on these streaming devices, like a Fire Stick, very locally. So it's very inexpensive, a couple $1,000s, but these are for bigger practices. But now we're getting deeper. But if we're talking about a smaller practice who's looking to scale quickly, focus on your email, focus on your website, focus on your social media. Most other things will take care of themselves. People knowing who you are, building that brand awareness is huge, and understanding what you practice is huge.
Yeah. And I think, therefore, if it felt like at the beginning of the interview, we spent quite a bit of time with the creating strategy, You can see now as we're starting to execute this strategy why it's so important to get it right in the beginning, because it just underpins everything you do instead of the kind of scattergun approach that unfortunately I've seen in healthcare many times, which is, oh, we've got a bit of a hole in our book. Oh, let's do something. Instead of saying,
Right.
hang on, we've got a plan here. Let's work the plan.
If you wake up real quick and you say, "What should I post on social media today?" You do not have a strategy.
Indeed.
That is not a strategy. Yes.
No, that's not a strategy. You've got the perfect system in place to generate the results that you're generating now. That's what you've got. And those results might not be
Right.
great. All right.
Right.
The third step, I like this apex predator. What do we call it? The SharkBite method. The third step is measuring strategy. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So of course you want to know what's working and what's not working. What I want people to get not caught up on in Angus, is, especially if you're trying to scale quickly, is ROI. I see way too many small companies get caught up on ROI. But I
Mm,
can tell you, to become a large practice, you need marketing, and you should be measuring KPIs, but getting too down deep into ROI may not be worth it. Now, I can tell you, for most of our medical practices, we can see directly, like, booked appointments from, whether that's from the social media or the SEO or the pay-per-click that we're doing,
mm,
and the website work that we're doing. But with that being said, they what people where they start digging too deep is they're like, "Yeah, but that's a current patient," or that's the son of this patient." And what they don't know is those referrals and those patients don't come back without good marketing. What I can tell you is that if you measure marketing in a way of what's creating engagement and what's driving traffic, try not to get all the way to the end of what's driving revenue. That will happen eventually. You will feel that eventually, but really focus on engagement and traffic. So engagement is like likes, comments, shares.
mm,
Traffic is people getting to your website. And there's also engagement on your website. Are they staying on your website? Are they booking an appointment? Are
mm.
they doing the conversions? But there's leading indicators, which is that engagement and traffic. Focus on that for the first year and a half. Worry about, you'll start seeing the conversions, and once you start really seeing the conversions, then start measuring those. But in the beginning, just make sure people are engaging with your content, because if they're not engaging with it, that's where you got to focus, is the top side. Because they're not engaging with it, then you got to look at your strategy and wonder if you got the right target audience, or if you got the right pain points for those target audience.
Mm.
Because if you have that right, the rest will work its way out, as long as you have solid creative as well and consistency. So when we're talking about measurement, I'd rather you measure how good the creative is than try to measure what your ROAS is, your return on ad spend,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of people want to get caught up in.
Yeah, it is. Look, it's tricky with a service-based business. It's one thing if you're selling t-shirts.
Right.
You've got an e-com business, and it's very tangible what it is that you do. It's, oh, I like that t-shirt. Let's get that purchased. But when you're dealing with a service-based business, one of the challenges you face, and this is true in marketing more generally, is we need lots and lots of touch points for people to
Correct.
go through the know and trust journey, and everybody needs to do it. Now, it can happen very quickly. If someone's got an emergency, then they can, let's say they're looking for a
Correct.
dentist. It's, wow, I've got a toothache. Let's read a bunch of reviews, and they could end up with 5 or 10 touch points very quickly and then call you. But for many other people, you are just, it's like putting marbles in a bucket. You just need to keep putting those marbles in. And at some point, the patient's going to be ready and they make the call. And curiously, what happens, as Nick and I both know, is that they will finally see something. Maybe it's an ad or a social media post or whatever. And then they'll call, and the practice is like, oh, so how come you
Right.
got in touch? And they say, oh, I saw an ad or whatever. And they're like, oh, ads are the answer. No,
Right.
ads are the end of a process that might have taken months, maybe even
Definitely.
years. And
Correct.
that consistency is really important. Now,
Yep.
Nick, as we start to wind up, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I want to push back a little bit, because this sounds great. We've got this creating strategy, we've got the executing strategy, we've got the measuring strategy, but you do a brilliant job as a marketer and you get the phone to ring. Yes, some people will book on websites, but some people want to talk to you. And then the team on the phone God bless them. They got no idea about converting people. They want to engage in a technical
Yep.
discussion rather than actually getting someone to book the appointment. How do you manage that?
Right. Yeah, it's highly important that your marketing message and your sales message, they align. So this can't just be a scam of bait and switch, as we call it in the
Right,
States, where
right.
you get someone there because of one thing and then you sell them something else. What your marketing message and that whole strategy is really trying to understand who you are and who you're targeting and why it's important. If that's true, that should also be true on the side and genuine on the side of the actual sales and then closing the deal. And if they all align, that creates trust. And it's sometimes consciously, it's trust. Like I knew it. I saw that in the social media posts and he just said it again. I trust this place. They're going to go with it. Sometimes it's subconsciously.
Mm,
They see something, they hear something different, and they just get a bad feeling. You ever just get a bad feeling?
mm,
It might
mm,
be just because it's disjointed, but having a good sales process, we practice good sales process, managing a CRM, and that sales process is very similar for doctors as it is in any service, which is asking questions, peeling back that onion, really understanding why they are coming to you instead of just trying to book the appointment. If you
mm,
can show your brilliance through the questions you asked, and this is from the receptionist to the doctor,
mm.
they are going to feel very comfortable with you and they're going to want to do more business with you. They're going to want to book more appointments with you and that first appointment as well. Yep.
Yeah. Look, I would say from personal experience, Nick's mentioned the S word, sales, and there's many people in healthcare like, Angus, we don't sell. And I get it at one level, which is nobody in healthcare and indeed in any industry really wants to be salesy. No one wants to be manipulating people or pushing people or any of the negative experiences that we've had as consumers in relation to sales. But the bottom line is, you don't sell anything and you're out of business. So even if you're not calling it sales in your office, it is sales. There's an expression: marketing gets people to the door, sales gets them through the door. And that conversation that they have with your team on the telephone, typically, it could be through chat or messenger or something, that is a sales exercise. Even if you don't call it sales in your practice, even if the team go, "Oh, I hate sales," the reality is, if you don't have that part of the process working nicely with the marketing process, you can have Nick or others doing a world-class job, and unfortunately, it can all come to naught at that point. So
Yeah.
there we are.
The way I get people to look at sales in my organization, because we even have the creatives that do the same thing, because my creatives should be upselling my clients as well, but they hate that word. But what I like to do is tell them to bring them different strategies and ideas. We find two reasons why clients leave a marketing agency. One is perceived value, right? They just don't really understand the results they're getting. Number two is we're not bringing them enough new ideas.
Mm,
Someone else is bringing them a new idea. That is a sale, but another one that I talk to my team about is just seeing if it's a good fit. And it's really not a sale if you're being a consultant. And if you're just asking the questions to see if it's a good fit for them to work with you, you may find out that you get a lot more people. And that is making a sale. But in your mind, you should just look at it, is this patient a good fit for my practice? And in order to do so, I'm going to ask all the questions. I'm going to be genuinely interested about treating them well and treating them to wellness.
yeah, absolutely. Yes. You don't need to call it sales internally, but good fit. I think I really like that one. Nick, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more or get in touch, what should they do?
Yeah, check out the SharkBite method, krausmarketing.com. It's on there too. But if you Google either Kraus, Kraus, or SharkBite method, I guarantee you'll find us all over the world because that's what we do. We make sure we show up on search engines.
Well done. All right. Once again, Nick, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Angus. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. We've covered a lot there, haven't we? And as I like to say every week, it's not knowledge that's power, it's applied knowledge that's power, which begs the question, what's one thing you can do as a result of what you heard today? I encourage you, go and do that now before you go on to the next thing. Finally, if you got some value from our time together, then please go to where you heard this podcast and leave us a lovely review to give us the encouragement to bring you more great content every week on Practice Growth HQ.